Welcome back, everyone, to another episode as we celebrate Women's History Month. Today, we are speaking with Kathy Caprino. Kathy is a career and leadership coach, speaker, podcaster, executive trainer, and educator dedicated to the advancement of women in business. She is also a senior Forbes contributor and the author of Breaking Down Breakthrough, the professional women's guide to claiming a life of passion, power, and purpose, and the most powerful you, 7 bravery boosting paths to career bliss. Kathy, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Enrique. I'm so grateful to be here. We're going to have a blast, I know.
Yes, I am so looking forward to this conversation. And folks, we will be speaking about how to find the brave in you. And I can't wait to get into this because I know that Kathy has a bombshell of content to share with us. But before we get into that, Kathy, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, let's see. Where do I begin? When I was 3. No, I'm teasing. The long and the short of it is, if we start in the professional life, I had an 18-year corporate career in marketing and publishing. And, in the beginning, it was rewarding. But as I hit 40, there were some big bumps, Enrique, and those turned into full-blown crises. Sexual harassment, gender discrimination, gender bias, toxic colleagues, narcissistic bosses, zero work-life balance, chronic illness. I had an infection of the trachea. Who's ever heard of it? 4 years, every 3 months, I would get so sick, I wouldn't even be able to speak. Nothing would come out of my mouth, which is so telling. And I wasn't in the fabric of my little kids' lives. They're 25 and 28 now, so thank goodness we got through that hard time. But worse than that was waking up every day saying, is this the work that I'm going to be doing? It felt so lacking in contributive value, but I was stuck in the, capital S. So I did nothing to make a change out of that career, although I was really broken down in it until 9/11. I was laid off in a way that was not very copacetic. And I had, a breakdown moment where I said, I've had it enough. I don't know what the heck is going on here, but I can't continue like this. And long story short, I became a marriage and family therapist, which was life-changing, working with clients dealing with rape, incest, pedophilia, suicidality, drug addiction. It was so humbling and so transformative, but it wasn't the end of the journey. I also became a coach. And so for 16 years, I've been coaching women, typically mid to high level professional women, but also other women and men as well. And I'm sitting here talking to you, I think probably because you might have seen, we're both in the Leaders Hum Wonderful Power List 200. And I've been writing a lot about what I talk about in my second book, The Most Powerful You. What I'm seeing are, I'm going to call them power gaps among women. And briefly, the reason I saw that was a few years ago. I said, what is going on that no matter where these women are calling from? So I've worked with people in 6 continents, no matter what level, no matter how much money they're making, no matter what industry, they're bringing the same challenges over and over and over again. And I said, I have to figure this out and answer 2 questions. What are they missing in their life and work that they're coming for help? And what are they getting from the process of working together that creates breakthrough? That's my favorite word in the English language. So the answer was, they're missing the bravery to face head on what isn't working and take accountability to change it. But that's not enough. They're missing power. The power to be your own change agent. You're the author of your life. So that's that. That's my current focus, my passion. That's my little story.
Now, Kathy, I love your work, and I have followed what you've done throughout your career. I did know about the marketing and all of the things that you're currently doing. And congratulations on the top 200 list.
And
It's
to
not
you.
your first time, won't be your last, but
It's an
I'm so
honor, right?
happy for you. As you talk and you mentioned, I did nothing, and then you mentioned the gaps and all of these things. These are things that happen on a day-to-day basis. We are faced with, what do we do? And there is an option of doing nothing and remaining where you are, or even worsening, right? Because sometimes when you don't do anything, it gets worse.
Yeah.
Or, as you say, start to fill those gaps. And we'll get into these gaps here in a little bit. Start to fill those gaps with action and bravery, as you have so well said, causes you to get to the point of action. And then this breakthrough, your favorite word, happens, right? And so
It's
as we
true.
get into celebrating Women's History Month, because that's what the concentration of this month is, tell us a little bit more about those gaps, because I know you have them in your book. And folks that are listening, I encourage you right now, as you're listening or viewing this video, go see about this book. It's totally wonderful. And she provides a resource that we'll mention at the end. But tell us about that gap.
Yeah. So when I realized that power is what we need more of, and you're so right, Enrique, when you don't take action, usually things will get worse and worse until you have a breakdown moment or year or a long period of time. So I'm trying to help people not get to the point where everything is a crisis, where you're smacked across the face, right? So I said to myself, well, how do I break down this framework of power? What am I talking about? So over a period of 6 months, I looked at all of the interviews I'd done and client work, and this is what emerged. If I could read them to you and give you the percentage, so I've done a survey as well, 1,600 people have taken it. And these gaps impact men as well, but I find that they don't internalize them as deeply. They're not as damaging as for women, based on what women are telling me. So here they are. The first is not recognizing your special talents, abilities, and accomplishments. 63% of women said they have this gap. Number two is communicating from fear, not strength. 70%. Enrique, my gosh. Number three, reluctance to ask for what you want and deserve. 77% of women said they have this gap. Number four, isolating from influential support. I just want to say a word about that. Women have mentors, 3 times as many mentors as men, the research shows, but men have twice as many sponsors. Sponsors are people with clout, with influence, who open the doors that you can't open. 71% say they're isolating from that kind of support. Number five is acquiescing instead of saying stop to mistreatment. 48% said yes, which is almost half, but it's more than that. I think people don't want to admit that they're not doing anything when they see mistreatment around them, you know. Number six is losing sight of the thrilling dream you had for your life. 76%. And finally, number seven is allowing the past to continue to shape you. 62%. So 98% of the women who answered the survey have at least one of these, and 75% have 3 or more. And I can tell you, if you have 3 or more, you cannot thrive in your work. You may look successful. You may make a lot of money like I did, great benefits, vice president, managing big budgets and global initiatives, but you're not going to thrive as a human being. You're not going to feel respected, recognized, valued, heard. You're not making the impact you want to make. So there they are. Isn't it something else? Isn't it incredible? If I do say so myself.
Well, I tell you, as you're going through these stats, it just made me, and we were briefly talking about my appreciation for women. It just made me appreciate women even the more.
Oh, see, aren't you
Be-
amazing?
because the thing is, the biggest impacts on my life, and I'll be
Yeah.
I'm going to be trying to not tear up here. The biggest impacts on my life have been women, not men.
Let
And
me
if
hear more
women,
about that. I'm so interested.
and if women, this is the thing, if women have had the most impact on my life at half of their effort, that is crazy. Men can't not touch women. I don't care what they say. You need a man at full potential to impact you the same way a woman is impacting you at half of their potential.
No
I
one
said,
has ever said it like that. I haven't even thought of it in exactly that way. Can I amplify what you're saying? Earlier we spoke. My mom is in the end stages, 98 years old. And, she was a child of Greek immigrants. They were very poor. She was malnourished as a young child. She went on to have a great job at General Electric, helped support her own family, married my beloved dad, GE guy. I call her my warrior spirit. She was a fierce defender of my sister and I, and she taught me so much about how to soldier through difficult times. And, to me, she's an emblem of what you're saying. With the history and upbringing and the challenges she had, she overcame so much. And yeah, I think, if you would allow me to share for a minute why I think we're going through this in this country and other countries. And this is not to bash men. I need everyone to understand that. Men have been huge supporters in my life. But this is just to tell it like it is. The reason women struggle like this is we live in a patriarchal world, particularly in business and academia and medicine. It's so what's a patriarchal world? I know you've had guests who've talked about this, but briefly, the way I see it, and I learned this from a therapist, Terry Real, who's a true expert in dynamics, power dynamics. And he said in a patriarchal world, we all split ourselves in half. There's the feminine and the masculine. And I say it in quotes. These are rigid gender stereotypes. So listen to my voice. What is a man? Confident, assertive, gets it done, not vulnerable, not emotional, not connective, right? What's a woman? What's feminine? Soft, malleable. You can just hear it in my voice. Pleasing, accommodating. We put others first. We don't brag. We don't claim. We don't show that we're confident. The problem with this is it damages both genders, all genders. Men need to be vulnerable. Women need to be strong. Sometimes, we need it all. But we cut ourselves in half. And sadly, in a patriarchal world, we shun vulnerability. I had on my podcast Mark Green, who talks about man box culture. And I literally cried on the show about, research done with 5-year-old boys who were asked, what is it to be a boy? It's astoundingly sad. So the challenge here is some people have asked me over time, well, are you blaming the victim here? Meaning women are victimized. I'm like, you do not understand. I'm not blaming the victim. I'm helping us rise above victimization. And the way to do that is become more empowered and embrace power. And the last thing I'll say, because I know you need to share as well. Women have said to me, I do LinkedIn polls and I'll get 2,000, 3,000 votes. I asked people a while ago, what do you think about the word power? Do you want more of it? Women told me both publicly and privately, I don't want power. So I said, what do you want? They said influence and impact, authority. I said, I hate to break it to you. I said it nicely. You can't have that without power. But I know why women shun power, because we've been under the thumb of abusive power. But what I'm trying to have a rally cry about is, how Shakespeare said nothing is, but thinking makes it so. Shakespeare knew everything. Power is not abusive in and of itself. It's who's wielding it and how they're wielding it. So I'm asking everyone to embrace positive power. Empowering power, because when you rise, you will help others rise.
I'm listening to you. I'm not going to get theological here, but I will. I
Go
will
ahead.
bring in a man was created, women were created. We were created with specifics, right? And those specifics, and for men and women listening, those specifics of who we are were never meant to possess it. What we do as men is that we possess what we have been given, when in reality is we supposed to share it with the woman, and the woman is supposed to share her essence with us to make us 100% human. If you're operating, possessing who you are as, let's say, soft, pleasing, if you're possessing that and you're not sharing it, you can't get the other part
You're
and you
right.
can't be whole.
I think also the problem is some of these traits that we think we were given. Well, here's what I say. We didn't come out of the womb like this. We did not come out of the womb not powerful, not confident, not. I can't tell you how many women have said, they'll tell me something they've done that's amazing. I'll say, why don't I see that on your LinkedIn profile? I'm a big LinkedIn advocate. They're like, well, I don't want it to sound like I'm bragging. If I would be a millionaire if I had $1 for every woman who said this to me. The problem is we're conditioned and socialized, and I think in a very misguided way, that entraps us in these gender beliefs. Enrique, I did a while ago, maybe 2015, I did a post on my Forbes blog on what is feminism and why do so many men and women hate it. It still is one of the most viewed, and I did a video about it on YouTube. 2 men wrote, "Shut up, you dumb C word." And there was so much vitriol coming at me, but not just from men. Women said, feminism has ruined our world. You'd be shocked, maybe you wouldn't be shocked. But what I'm saying here is the problem to me isn't that each individual has their own essence. The problem is that that essence is in a box. If I'm confident at work, I can be considered the B word, whereas my male counterpart is doing exactly that and getting promoted for it. These are the problems. It's the social and societal and cultural shaping that keep us locked, each of us, in boxes that are hurting us. Would you agree with that?
And that's absolute truth. And I go back to your birth comment. You were not born like this.
Oh,
We
and
learn
men weren't
we
either.
learn these things,
That's it.
right? The kid that doesn't cry and the man that doesn't cry is the same person.
I know.
The only difference there is that somebody told them men don't cry.
And
And they put them in
shamed
a
them
box.
and shamed them.
Oh yes. This is another show.
I know. I know. And
But
now
it's
I
so
understand also why, I was a number 1 tennis player in high school. So I had traits of boys that and they'd want to play tennis with me to knock off the number 1, I beat the number 1 girl and I'd wipe the tennis court with him. But anyway, I think that the challenge is that, women have said to me, yeah, but if I speak up, there's going to be punishment. And there sometimes is. There's penalties for being what you're not expected to be. But I say, yeah, there might be, but what's the alternative? To sit back and do nothing? And I always say this, it is changing, but the world isn't going to change till they see millions of more women who are confident and brave. We believe what we see. And if we begin to see more of it, it won't be such a challenge. And I say it on the flip side, we're seeing more vulnerable men who can cry, men who can, bravely and happily be the ones that are the caregivers because they've decided, that's best for their family for whatever reason. In my now ex-husband, who, is a dear friend and we're amicable, he is a percussionist, a jazz percussionist. And so he would do a lot of work at night, gigging and a lot of travel, but he could do a lot of the taking my little kids to their play dates. Mothers would look at him suspiciously, like, what's this? No, people.
Yeah, we're trapped. We're trapped in norms. I tell you that, and damaging, right? Damaging. So you started with the gaps. This first gap that you cover in your book, it's crazy. Not recognizing your special talents, abilities, and accomplishments. Not recognizing it. It's the first fault of getting to anywhere
You're
if
right.
you can't do it. So tell me about that.
Yeah, and it's many layered. After being corporate VP, I was a therapist, and so everything has a lens to me, a therapeutic lens. But meaning, there are a lot of deep layers to this. One of those layers are when you're good at something, you don't recognize that it's special. And what I want to say to everyone listening, you are like your thumbprint. There is no one on the planet like you with your amalgam of traits and triumphs and tribulations and devastations and from your ancestry to the languages you speak to all of it. You are special. I don't mean more special than him or her. I mean special. We're all special. But for instance, I'm a singer and I love being on stage. Well, other people would rather poke their eye out with a stick than ever getting on stage. But when you're comfortable with something, number one, you don't recognize it. Number two, this is crazy. I have something called a career path assessment. It's 11 pages of questions I wish someone had asked me 40 years ago. And if I'd answered them honestly, I don't think I would have made a lot of the mistakes I made. So it's free to download. I can give you a link. But in it, I ask, what are you most proud of about yourself? How do you stand out? What are your special talents? I can't tell you how many women absolutely leave it blank. They're not even able to throw something down on the page. So I think part of that is the imposter syndrome. And I interviewed a woman from KPMG. They did a big study that 75% of executive women suffer from imposter syndrome. And the way they defined it is these executive women did not believe it was their doing that got them in the role. It was luck or being in the right place at the right time. And I do not mean to paint all women with the same brush or all men, but I can tell you, men typically don't think like that. They think this is what I did. And, there's so many research studies. For instance, if you see a posting and there's all these credentials, a job posting, men will go for it when they only have 50% or 60%. Women wait till they have 100%. Well, if you wait till you have 100%, these are ideal job postings. You're leaving so much on the table, right? But so some of this problem is we are not trained to think, look what I did. We're trained to put others first. So people say to me, women, I don't know how to communicate. This is what I accomplished. Part of it is because we had a team. And if you have a team, no, you're not going to say you did it, but you sure need to know, here's what the team did. They had a product innovation that was amazing. They used research, and I provided the strategic direction. We went the B2C route rather than B2B. You've got to know what you contributed, and you've got to look at the block you have for identifying what you bring, how you're different, and why that matters. And then you have to showcase it.
Never diminish your light. I tell you, it's funny because if I see it, I attack it. I do. If I see somebody, especially women, not speaking up for themselves or saying, acknowledging their role in the success of something, I'll be quick to let them know that I'm not going to let that happen. So, and true leaders, whether you're male, female, doesn't matter. A true leader won't allow you to. They'll see it and they'll say, nope, that's not going to happen on, and I'm going to say my watch because I served for 26 years. So we're going to make this right. And you're going to get the appropriate amount of recognition. You put it in. So
Can I talk to you about that? I interviewed a wonderful individual, Tessa West, about her book, Seven Jerks at Work. And I mean, we know all of these jerks: the micromanager, the credit stealer, the person who doesn't do any work and somehow gets away with amazing. But I've also recently written about why are there so many terrible managers? Terrible, damaging managers. So I applaud you for what you do there, but you no, you wouldn't be shocked. You're a leadership expert. It all comes down to the individual's self-esteem. And there are so many managers and leaders that steal the credit, that are uncomfortable saying Enrique did that because they're so fragile. And there's a lot of narcissism. I know a lot about narcissism. Um, narcissism can't be challenged. Narcissists can't take accountability. If you say, Enrique, I just have to talk to you about that conversation we had. It landed this way for me. A true narcissist, it's a personality disorder, can drum you out with a murderous rage. And I've had it. I've had this. So you're a healthy, empowering leader. Sadly, we've got a lot of people that need personal growth to ever sit in a leadership chair or a managerial chair. It upsets me that in so many organizational systems, damaging managers are allowed to do what they do.
and I've seen it on my side as well. Always ask the same question. How? How does
Is
this
this?
happen?
How do you leave this person in this spot with you're sexually harassing them? You're so biased. You're so demeaning. I had one senior leader, didn't go well. He would, I can, and for the women listening, I wonder if you'll nod your heads. So he was the president, I was a vice president. So there was a level between me and him. And I was running multi-million dollar budgets. He would look at me like, why don't you go redecorate the kitchen? The way he would look at me was so denigrating. And he would be hired to come in and turn around businesses. And he would bring a posse of men, the same three guys, never a woman. But what's hard about it is when you're being treated like that, you're like, is this really happening? Am I crazy? Is he looking at me? Is he acting like I should go redecorate the kitchen, clean the kitchen, go do something else, but not sit at the table with him? What's going on here? And frankly, I've been sexually harassed, and there was an email that the guy sent. I'd like to see you naked in my pool. We're having a party. Hope you come. And when you get these things, you really, truly, you don't know what's happening. But I want to tell you, after the minute I got laid off and I was cleaning up, I deleted the email. So this goes to power gap number 5, acquiescing instead of saying stop to mistreatment. When I asked myself later, why did I delete that? I didn't know, but I thought to myself, well, I probably should have said something during the 2 years I was at that company. I don't think it's fair, which is a dynamic that happens with power. Terry Real, the therapist I interviewed, said what happens is the dominant culture. You've got the dominant culture and a minority culture. You have that in families where the parents are dominant and the kids are the minority culture. You have it in businesses. You have it in society. The minority culture protects the dominant culture. So back to not recognizing your special talents, abilities, and gifts. It isn't an easy thing, but by God, we have to do it. And often we need outside help for it. Often you need a coach. Or, you know what I say to people? Get on LinkedIn, use every feature of LinkedIn, put the 50 skills that you can be endorsed in, list 50, but then ask for recommendations and give them. Don't just come with your hand out. But I know you have beautiful recommendations on LinkedIn. When the first time I ever got one after being laid off in a way that I felt I'm a terrible leader, what a mess. A woman said, I was not in Kathy's unit but I can tell you she was the leader I wanted to be. I cried because when you hear other people speak of you, they give you language for how you're impacting. So if you don't know how you're amazing, go out and ask for some recommendations. I know you'll be stunned. What do you think?
I totally agree. And, it kind of leads into gap number 2, which is communicating from fear, not strength. We'll get into that one. Folks, this was going to be a little long because all this stuff that we're covering is just so important to establishing the brave you. But I want to step back a little, Kathy, when you talk about having received that message from this lady, the observation from afar, and saying, yeah, I wasn't in that group,
Wow.
but I'll tell you that this is the lady that I'm looking to be like in the future. And before we got into the podcast, we were talking about how women have influenced me in a way. And I kind of briefly said, man, if they impacted me with half of their tank full, it's just crazy. It really kind of makes me feel a certain kind of way when I see and hear the stats around these gaps, right? Because how strong must a woman be to have those gaps and those percentages and
Rock.
still rock, right? Still be VPs and still be heads of departments and still be CEOs. And it's just, if anything this month, if I want to bring out anything this month, is that a month is not enough
Oh,
to
that's so
to
beautiful.
show appreciation for women. Like I said in a post earlier today, men don't act like women don't have the major stake in your life, right? Because you could be the CEO of whatever company you want. You come home, and if the home is not right, guess what? I'll tell you right now, accolades, promotions, contracts, being the CEO of Triad Leadership, none of that would have happened. None of it. I have done my part. So I'm going to recognize that. I don't have that gap, right? But I'm going to recognize that I've done my part. But I'll tell you that the ability to sustain what I do and the ability to go after the things that I do are all based on my wife's support.
How beautiful. How beautiful. I do want to say one thing here to really make it clear. You're given such deep information. You said if women can do so much with their tank half full, I need to clarify something. How do I want to put this? We have been socialized not to be powerful and confident, but we've also been socialized that it's okay to be empathic, connected, vulnerable, communicative, sensitive. I just interviewed Andre Solo with his new book, Sensitive. Oh my gosh, about highly sensitive people, men and women, 30% of the population. It's about how we process, and I'm one of them, but how you process information very deeply and how you're different. But I wonder, we didn't talk about this earlier, but when I look at women who have impacted me, Mom, it was her warrior spirit, really, her toughness, One time I was a kid and I nicked my car door, nicked some other woman's car door, and the woman was coming after us. And my mother says, "Go home and take an aspirin." Oh, that's my mother. Just really go home and take an aspirin. Oh my God. Mom, love you. But I think isn't that the best? But I'm interested in this. I think probably I don't want to be, gender stereotyping, but the gifts that women do have come in great abundance. About not all women, don't get me wrong. We're not painting all with all the brush, but I think probably a lot of what you got from the women in your life are the things that weren't drummed out of them. What do you think? Listening to you, uplifting you, supporting you, having compassion, having empathy, understanding your vulnerability and not shutting it down. You're a little boy and you didn't do well on the baseball field, and giving you support, not going, buck up, stop crying. I don't know. I'm making it up. What do you think? Tell me what you got from the women in your life specifically.
Earlier, I spoke about, and obviously after talking, there are boxes that we get put in as
Right.
we grow up, right? Because we're not born that way. What I got from the women was that scenario that I talked about. Yes, I was put in a box and I lived that box. And so they opened their box and gave me what I wasn't
That's
uh,
it.
have, right? And so they made me whole. They made me a whole man.
I love it. The thing about empathy and vulnerability is when any gender identity, when you can be vulnerable with another person and see their vulnerability and be healing within that, you are going to allow that person's potential to thrive unequivocally, more than buck up, be strong. You told me earlier, your goal is not to change people. Your goal is to make them be more of who they already are. You know, Spending time as a marriage and family therapist and doing work with families, I can tell you there's bad parenting. I wrote a piece that is, whatever, it got 8 million views. 7 crippling parenting behaviors that keep children from becoming leaders. And somebody wrote me, I don't want my kid to be a leader of an organization. I didn't mean leader of an organization. I mean a leader of their own life. You can't lead anything if you can't lead your own life. I'm sorry. You can't. You'll try, but you can't. But these crippling behaviors are, holding them to an impossible standard, conditional love. You have to be straight A's. You have to go to Harvard. You have to, be number one on the soccer team for me to love you. Or never talking about the hard stuff, being or thinking that everybody has to win. I don't agree with that. Not everybody is winning when you're playing a sport. And to always make a child feel like there is no competition, that's just not real world. Anyway, it goes on and on. Um, but there is bad parenting. And I want to say that some cultures, I think, push women down more. Certain cultures say to women, do not brag. I don't like this confidence. You're not supposed to say that. You're not supposed to do that. So there's bad parenting too.
And that is where it begins.
It sure does.
You're
I
born.
say that you are what your childhood taught you to be, unless you unlearned it. Period.
And it's so hard to get to that point. We're talking about gaps, and I love the fact that yeah, you address the women in your gaps, but you acknowledge that men have these gaps as well.
Definitely.
Because if you're raised in a single family home, a parent home, and it's a lady, you're gonna get all her gaps, and
Yeah.
that's what you're gonna get raised as. I was raised in a one parent home. It
Wow.
was my mom.
Wow.
And even the men that did come in her life did not participate, right? So it wasn't like we got anything from them.
I see.
But what I like of how my mom treated us was she did not allow her gaps to seep into us. And for that, I definitely have to,
Wow.
be grateful
That's amazing.
that yeah, that she kept us from the things that may have been plaguing her. Now, obviously, you can't help but
Yeah.
witness things
That's it.
and then pick those things up. I'm a huge gardener because she was. So
Wow.
I saw her and I saw the smile on her face, and she would just be so happy, and she'll be out there for hours, and I'm like, "Mom, you're baking." She's like, "Yeah, but that's my
Joy. That's
thing,
my
right?"
joy. Oh.
And so I picked it up.
Can I talk to you about, just to be clear, allowing gap number 7, allowing the past to continue to define you? So what I do want to say is there's so much that we're experiencing as children that we don't know is active in our own lives. So for instance, in my book, I talk about, it's a real life story about a woman whose mother was an alcoholic, and it was a very chaotic, unstable life. And at a very young age, this woman, my client, saw a TV show where there was a woman who was an advertising executive. And she said, that's going to be me, because I can make a lot of money and never have this horrible, unstable, scary. So what happens is we often, as a reaction to what we're experiencing, like another client, their father gambled. So one Christmas they, went to Tahiti. The next Christmas everything was being repossessed. What happens is we, as young people, we're coping. So we develop coping mechanisms that we're not aware of. And our brain is not really fully cognizant of the coping mechanisms, but they carry into adult life. So this first woman, she became an advertising marketing executive, hates it, has a big McMansion. She calls it McMansion. Had a crisis. What am I doing? But came onto my course, The Amazing Career Project, and through 16 weeks realized, I don't want this. What she wanted was a tiny house in the mountains and didn't want this nonsense. So it's not just what our parents, well, the other piece is this. You learn as a child not what your parents say, but what they do. So often a parent will say, I want you to be like this, but they're not acting like that. It's important that you never lie, and they're stealing from the grocery store in front of the kid. Well, that's okay. They won't notice a bottle of Coke. Your child learns from what you do, not what you say. But it's not just what the parents are doing. It's, my parents, for instance, dad was also a child of Italian immigrants, and it was World War II. He was born in 1920. He went through World War II, the Depression, so he was frugal, incredibly frugal. And I grew up feeling like there was a stinginess. There wasn't a stinginess. He just grew up with, needing to be very, 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 very careful about money. But I'm a reaction to that, sadly. The minute I got out on my own, I'm going to make a lot of money and spend whatever I want. Well, how well did that work out? Balance. We're looking for balance, people. So I just want to say that I want you to think about, in the book, there's exercises. Well, I do want to say something about that. But what did your past teach you? What were the messages you got about yourself, about life, about women, about men, about power, money? You can't, greater awareness equals greater choice. You can't change what you're not aware of. What I wanted to mention too about change, how you said breakdown moment. We were talking about that. People have said to me, how come I've read 10,000 books and I haven't changed? I can't change it. How come I've been to 4 retreats in the past year? Nothing's changing. So this is what I want to say. As a therapist, I saw this. Insight is great, but insight doesn't change your life. It's action, but not just any action. It's empowered action like nothing you've ever done. That's why people don't change. Well, I did this and I changed jobs. I even changed my entire career to a therapist, and the same narcissistic patterns were happening. And I had to say, what is going on that I got a master's in therapy? I have become a therapist and I'm still having the same relational issues that I had 10 years ago because I hadn't changed. So there you go.
And when we change, the world changes.
It's true.
Believe it or not, when you as an individual get through, let's say, these gaps and actually put in play the type of changes that you want to see. I said that this morning in a conversation, be the change you want to see. That's it. Don't worry about everybody else. Be the change. You be it. And you impact the world, even if it's just minuscule amount of impact. On a ship, I learned, if you touch the rudder any amount, your point B is not where you're going to land. So, and
wow, what a great metaphor. Touch the rudder, people.
Touch the rudder.
That's a great tweetable, right?
Yeah, but it's so true. If you want to see these things now, folks, We ran through the gaps earlier on. We just talked about allowing past trauma. There's one that I think is a very, and now they're all detrimental if you leave them without addressing them.
True.
Um, but gap number 5, acquiescing instead of saying stop. I see so much power in that in that gap. And we talked about power. Yes, people use influence and power in various ways, some for their own gain, some for the gain of people and all of them around. And even then, when it's just all for people, then what about you, right? So you have to have a balance. You talked about having a balance.
Right.
But this one, I've seen a lot of people in this one, and I just don't know how they would break out of this because they allow mistreatment. The reason we are in the industry and doing the work we are doing is because a lot of people are still gripped by this gap number 5.
And it's such a difficult, complex challenge. In the book, I give starting strategies, right? Because it's a very difficult thing. We're not going to change it overnight, but let's say we're getting sexually harassed. So the problem is in certain systems, and every organization, family, community, it's a system. Sometimes the system is sustaining it. So let's say, for me, I was harassed by someone very, very senior. I knew there was no way I would survive in that organization if I spoke up to HR about this. I knew it. What I did wrong is accept it and stay there. I should have gone to a lawyer. And after I got laid off, I went to a lawyer, and I will tell you, and it wasn't about sexual harassment that I went to the lawyer, but he did say, I don't understand why you deleted the smoking gun. Why did you do that? And I said, I don't know why. I was scared. So wait, let me finish the sentence. Then, and I want to tell you, it ended very well for me. When you are being mistreated, the reason it's so hard is you don't know what's going on. Like I asked somebody, what's going on here that this guy's asking me to go on these boondoggle trips. We got to go to Texas to meet with the client. I'm like, no, we don't. She goes, yeah, he does that. He wants to have an affair with every decent looking woman that comes to but what you need to do is you need outside help, typically from a lawyer. And I want to tell people, I interviewed Tom Spiegel, who's a former federal prosecutor, who now his sole focus in his practice is supporting women who are wrongfully treated. He said a lot of women, but men are sexually harassed as well. But we don't fight it because we think it means it's going to be a protracted $1 million lawsuit. No, it doesn't have to be. So for me, for instance, my lawyer sent one letter. That was it. And it, again, ended well. So what you want is, first of all, to gain clarity on what is happening. And now sometimes you can talk to HR, but I have said this, and HR people have agreed, HR is not your friend. They have a job to do. And I don't mean they're going to perpetuate necessarily you being mistreated. I'm saying they are not your friend. They have a role. So you have to suss out, who can I talk to? And this is why having sponsors and mentors is really important. A very powerful person, let's say, at the organization who you have a great relationship with, you can say to them, if they're safe to say it to, you can say, this is what's happening here. But I love the idea of going to a coach, talking to, someone like Tom Spiegel, where the lawyer can say, yeah, you have something here. But what we have to do is not somebody said to me, what does acquiescing mean? It means doing nothing. It means sitting back. It means allowing it. Now, there's a story I want to tell. There's a fellow, I'm not remembering his name. He's not from the US, but he posted a video of him saying no to what was about to be a racist joke. So, as I understand it, they hired him as a leadership consultant, paid him big bucks. He was out to dinner with the leadership team, and the CEO was about to share at the dinner table a racist joke. And this guy says, let's call the boss Fred, the CEO. This guy says, Fred, excuse me a minute. It sounds to me like you're about to tell a racist joke. If you are, I'd ask that you don't. If you want to continue, I'm going to leave the table. And he was really proud of that he did that. I don't recommend that necessarily, because you have to be in a position of power to challenge power. Now, maybe if you want to do it and it's safe to do it, okay, do it. But most women I know are going to get crushed by that CEO because you've shamed him in front of 10 what I think is male leaders. So you have to understand the system that you're working in. And frankly, is shaming this guy in public what you should do? I'm not 100% sure. What you want is this guy doesn't ever want to tell a racist joke again. Shaming him, if he's a narcissist, will end very badly and he won't learn the lesson. Am I making sense? So it's a complicated situation, but first you need outside help. This is what's happening to me. And a lot of people actually tell me, for instance, I think there's gender discrimination or age discrimination. And I'll say, I'm 62, proud of it. Sure, there's age discrimination, but a lot of people will just go there. I'm not getting that promotion because of age. And I'll say, have you done these 5 steps to get that promotion? Have you talked to anybody about wanting that promotion? Have you built the case for that promotion? Do you understand that even though you're doing great in this job as a manager doesn't mean you deserve to be in the director role? I don't say it like this. I'm getting agitated. But what we need to understand, is there really bias? What's at play here? Does that make sense?
It's so important to know the entire lay of the land, both what you're doing and what others may be doing. And even still, you could be 100% sure what you're doing and not 100% of what someone else is doing.
That's it.
So building a case, and to your words, is the perfect thing. If there is any foul play, then you can surely find that out. But please do something about what you can control and you can dictate and take care of that piece,
That's
before
right.
you start trying to find the gaps in those proceedings and things. There's so many gaps. There's 7 in all, folks. Kathy has a workbook that I'm going to make sure all that information is part of the show notes so that you can get a hold of that. You have 7 gaps. Kathy, if you was to encapsulate these in a way where someone could say, well, I need to explore that I don't have these, what would you tell them in that regard?
Well, logistically, I do have a survey, 8-minute survey. You can take it and you will see right there, yes or no, yes, no, or maybe. And if I describe the gaps, if you say maybe, you have it, trust me. But, at a higher level, I'm going to tell you this. I'm passionate about this work, Enrique, because I had all these gaps. So I would ask you, are you thriving? Are you doing meaningful work that matters to you? Do you feel respected? Do you feel valued? Do you feel you're making the impact you long to? You don't have to have data and statistics to know that. Do you want something more, different, and better in your life? Then you probably have one of these gaps. 98% of women do. So you're in wonderful company, and you're in wonderful company that women and men are taking steps to close the gaps. So you're not less than when you have the gaps. Again, greater awareness equals greater choice. Ask yourself, am I happy? Am I thriving? And am I reaching my highest potential? And if you really get clear and deep with yourself, you're going to know the answer. So I think if the answer is no, I don't think I'm reaching my highest potential, read The Most Powerful You and see what it unlocks for you.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to make sure to put all of that in the show notes, all the links necessary for that answer to come. And hopefully you will take the opportunity to answer that for yourself. I hate the fact that the statistics are piled up against women in these gaps. And I'll tell you right now, as a man, as I was reading these gaps, I'm like, yep, I was there. Yes, I was there. Yes, I was there. And so it's not something that's just women specific, but it is nice to look at and evaluate yourself. Be truthful now. All right, don't. This requires a lot of truth from you, and although be it painful, just to think about or even explore. If you answer yes, I have this gap, then it's time to do the work. Right, it's time to do the work, and that work has to come from you for you. And that's what I love about this type of transformation. It's actual work that is for you. It's not for somebody else. Women do it all the time. You've been doing for somebody else all this time. It's time to
Mhm.
do for you. And so I encourage it. Kathy, if they wanted to get a hold of you, and I'll put some of those links for
Wonderful.
the resources, but if they wanted to get a hold of you, what would be the best way to do so?
You can go right to my website, kathycaprino.com. But you know what? Because I'm such a big fan of LinkedIn, I'd love it if people connect with me there. And, here's a tip. Start sharing your thought leadership, everybody. So, where you see this podcast, share it on LinkedIn, tag Enrique and me, and say particularly what you loved about it. When you do that, first of all, we're going to see it. We're going to comment. You're sharing your thought leadership. You and I are going to connect. And it's a way of really coming out and sharing who you are while also being kind to us. So LinkedIn would be a great place, but certainly you can contact me through my website, kathycaprino.com, if you'd like.
All right. We'll make sure to put all those links for folks to be able to get a hold of you and explore the work that you're doing. I am so proud of you, Kathy,
Oh,
not
thank
just
you.
for the work that you've done in your life, but the work you're doing right now. It is so vital,
Thank
not
you.
only to women, it also spills over into men because some men have been raised by women, right? So we have that piece lingering in us predominantly, and so it's so good to see what you're doing, how you're doing it. Congratulations on all the lists that you get listed on.
Thank
I'm
you.
so humbled to be on one with you.
Thank you so much for having me, Enrique. And thank you for being such an amazing supporter of women. It is so meaningful and you're really a role model for so many people. Thank you. I'm humbled to be here.
Thank you
Can't wait
so
to have
much.
you on my show too.
All right, we'll do that soon. We are celebrating Women's History Month, folks. It's time to celebrate women. I hope you join me. Today's episode is sponsored by Triad Leadership Solutions and Superpass, which are powering our website and app, Southern Sweet and Sassy Coffee, and Harchester, London. Thank you so much. If you've enjoyed this episode and learned something interesting, please do leave a comment. Please leave a message. Or if you enjoyed the topic that we covered today, make sure to subscribe and let us know by leaving a comment. We're always looking for new ideas. If you have a topic that you would like for me to feature, let me know as well by emailing me at triadleadershipsolutions@gmail.com. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode where we dissect leadership from another angle. And as we like to end the show, success to you.